Hi, everybody, and welcome to Module 3. We're going to be going over your way to study. So we will get into it. While we move through today's workshop, little mini lesson, I want you to keep these things in mind. What study techniques do you already use regularly? Do you study better alone or with other people or in a study group? Do you know where to look for tutoring or support for class material? And then are there any subjects that are more difficult to study than others? So we'll be first covering processing information, which will include things like spacing, intensity, and environment. So spacing, what is that? What does that mean? And if any of you have a background in learning and memory, psychology, cognitive sciences of sorts, you may have already heard about spacing a little bit. And so spacing is just breaking up your studying of material. The opposite of this, which is very common for a lot of college students, I feel like especially post-traditional students who have like less time on their hands, is cramming, right? Like we go to class, we're attentive, we take notes, we know an exam is coming up, but we're not going to start studying for it until like 2 or 3 days before. And then we're just going to do this marathon study session. That's what the majority of people do, to be super honest. I know a lot of my students I've worked with have done that. And so you want to flip that. You want to do the opposite. And so you're harnessing the idea of less is more, short periods of active studying. And so you might feel like, well, like, is that effective? It's almost like the intensity and like painfulness of cramming is what tricks us into thinking that this is the most effective way. But truly breaking it up into small sections, so you're kind of looking at this as a marathon instead of a sprint, is actually going to be more effective for you to intake this information, keep it in your long-term memory, and be better able to recall it once the exam, paper, or whatever is coming up. So how can we make sure we're spacing our study? That's the trick. Starting as early as possible, right? That's really it in essence, because as we get closer to the exam or whatever deadline we're working up against, it is harder to space it. And so as you're seeing in this little diagram I have here, first learned, within days, we have there, you want to pick it up like a day later, brush over some things, quiz yourself, think about it, give yourself a little bit of a break. Maybe you're kind of only looking at it a little bit, working on homework, and then 3 days later, bringing it back up again, really actively looking into that material. And that is what's going to help you retain this information, because it's just more familiar to you. You're more readily involved with it. So intensity, what does it mean to study intensely, right? Because again, going back to cramming, some people might misunderstand that and think that that is studying intensely. But I'm going to bring it back to that example of this is a marathon, not a sprint. And in order to intensely compete in a marathon, you need to have energy. You need to have concentration, and you need to be able to have like the resources and tools in order to interact with whatever you're doing, that activity in the moment. So intensity is not sustainable if you cram your studying, which sucks, because sometimes that is the situation we end up in. But truly, we can only study intensely or be actively engaged with our information approximately 3 hours. So again, that's why the cramming, not the best route for you. And then we need high energy to do this. I already mentioned this. So the things to help you be able to have high energy to support you in studying intensely: get enough sleep, eat healthy, and then maybe a little bit of exercise in and out there. It's difficult to weave that in when you have many different responsibilities going on, work, taking care of somebody, and then also taking multiple classes. But it's all about just just really being strategic about how you're spending your time so that way you have the energy and cognitive resources to apply to your classes and your studying. So things we can do to elicit intense active study in that moment, right? Taking a 10-minute break per hour. So giving yourself some time to move your body, go talk to somebody in the house so you can remember what it's like to be a human outside of whatever content you're really getting into. Number 2, take a stroll, go around the block, get outside. If you are in Arizona right now, it's the summer. When I'm recording this, that is a little bit difficult, but early mornings, evenings, that's our time to get outside. Remember what nature is like when it's 100 above degrees. Don't ditch your self-care. I too am guilty of this, right? When I'm busy, the first thing or the least likely thing I am to do is eat healthy and take care of myself. But you have to weave that in there. Make sure you're doing the little things like showering, getting dressed in clothes that make you feel great, but are maybe comfortable, eating healthy food, or just like weaving in healthy food into your diet, and getting sleep for sure. That is something that your brain needs to do well. And then 4, make sure you're organized and have a plan of action. So really go into this intentionally, write it out, create a calendar for yourself of exactly when you're going to tackle each of these study sessions. And truly, from my experience, it is easiest to do this at the start of the semester, right? Get in there, set aside an hour to just kind of lay out all your syllabi and put it in either your Google Calendar or physical agenda there, and make sure that you have all of the exam dates and due dates. But then you can go back, okay, if I need 2 weeks to study spacing wise for this exam, I'm going to start on September 7th. So that is the plan. And then if you have any other examples, jot them down of what you need to feel your best so you can do your best studying and also taking exams, right? So additional tips: know your best time and commit to working during those hours. So I am, I would say more of a morning person. I'm not the ideal morning person, but I am more attentive in the morning than I am in the evening. I want to hang out. I want to watch Supernatural on Netflix, binge watch that, eat some food, hang out with my dog. That is not the time that I'm going to really be my best studying or working on something very intensely. And so considering that I too was an adult learner when I was finishing my master's degree, it's like, okay, how can I strategize this when I have to work a regular business job? I work 40 hours a week, but I am most alert in the mornings. Can I tweak my schedule a little bit so I'm setting aside half an hour in the morning to study or work on homework? Sometimes, as adult learners, as post-traditional students, you do what you got to do. You're working in the middle of the night. So do consider your additional responsibilities, but really take stock of like, when is my best time and how can I support myself in studying and working on things in that best time? So find a place that keeps you productive. If you're working at home, a quiet place at home, you can kind of like tuck yourself away if possible, or at least for little segments, especially if you are a parent, right? That might be a little bit easier said than done, but maybe you're working on that once your kids have went to bed, right? And so then you can work in the kitchen, kind of more undisturbed. Going outside of your home to a cafe, public library, and truly, I mean, if you're near a college or university campus that is public, you can go to their library. Even if you're still a UA student, you can still use their facilities technically. So limit your distractions. This will take willpower. This is so hard for me. I'm sitting here right now, my phone's here right now. And so what can you do to set yourself up for success, right? There's some tools I'll mention here later that kind of help guide us in not feeling so distracted by technology. But yeah, definitely set yourself up for success in terms of limiting your distractions, whether that is technology or people. I am a study group derailer. So I really don't do study groups unless it's with specific people I know who won't allow me to be like, hey, let's go get snacks and let's talk about our life, right? I need that alone studying for me to be focused. So make sure you're stocked up on water, snacks, little coffee, tea, hot cocoa, anything you would need so that way you can stay in your area for the designated amount of time. And then you can even use your breaks to restock, stretch your legs and then get settled again. So now we're going to be switching to study techniques. This is more specific, right? Here's the actual tool. So we've set up our habits and kind of our behaviors. Now we're going to talk about the specific techniques we can employ: testing effect, elaboration or deep processing, study groups, and then self-regulated learning, what those things mean. So testing effect, whether or not you knew that's what this is called, a lot of you are probably very familiar with this, especially in the sense of flashcards. And so a couple examples of how to use the testing effect when you're studying, teaching a friend, I think bonus points if they are not familiar with the class you're taking, because that's going to help you really break down this information into a way that's understandable for them. And then you are going to understand that information better. The more we can put information into our own words, the more likely we are to remember it and be able to use it effectively later. So flashcards, that's a great way to test yourself, as long as you can really hold to not looking at the back, push yourself, really try to use your memory. And then those will be excellent for, I think, terms and processes that you would just need to memorize rather than understand in a conceptual way. So, like if you're studying a language, if you're in statistics and you need to know which formulas to use for what, flashcards would be a really effective tool for something where you just need to memorize a function or a term or something like that. Diagram, draw it out from memory. So the best example of where to use this is in those science-based classes. I took a physiology course. It was very difficult, and this was my saving grace, right? Because if I needed to understand the renal system that our kidneys use, if flashcards might help a little bit for me for terminology of the parts, but if I need to understand the process in which things are going through, diagram is where it's at. Draw it out on a big whiteboard if you have access to that. Draw it out on paper. I'm sure you could even, if you're really tech savvy and there's tools online or in your computer, do that, right? The more vivid and visual, it will help you go, okay, yes, I can imagine this. I can see this. And so now when I'm taking the exam, I can break that down and choose the right answers, or even reconstruct this diagram if I needed to on the exam. Practice tests are always excellent. I think also an added bonus to practice tests is it may help you feel less anxious about the actual exam you're taking in the future. Get those heebie-jeebies out of you and just say, okay, I know this, I've done this many practice tests, and I feel very confident that I understand the information and when to choose the right answers. I did put Quizlet on there because that's a tool a lot of students use to create practice tests, and it'll also help you create visual flashcards or virtual flashcards on there. So that's just one example, but there are many more online. I'm sure you could just Google, practice tests, and it'll give you some awesome free resources for you to use. You must test yourself 4 to 5 times before it moves into long-term memory. And so something to consider with that 4 to 5 times, you do want to make sure, you're getting the majority, if not all of those answers correct, however you're testing yourself, but try to go for that route, and you're going to feel so much more supported in taking your exams. So elaboration and deep processing is something really important to me. This is what I actually helped do research for in my undergraduate career and a little bit after. It sounds really fancy, but really we do this all the time, or we can do this all the time. And I'll give you a couple examples of how you can use this in your regular life and also how to use this on exams. So elaboration is the act of connecting learned material to relevant images, previous experience or self-generated examples. So we're making this information personal to us. That's the most important part. Things in textbooks, memorizing how it's put in the textbook or memorizing how your instructor shared it in class, it's not the worst, right? They know their stuff, so that it makes sense of how they convey it to you. But when it makes sense to you, when it's relevant to you, you are so much more likely to be able to pull that out of your memory and actively apply that to your exam or homework. So that's what we're going for. The trick is, it doesn't technically have to make sense to you or make sense to other people of how you relate to it. It's just like, is it salient to you? Is it relevant? And then I'm able to recall the right way to put this out here. So my example is in Spanish. I'm currently teaching myself Spanish on Duolingo, and one thing that was really getting in my way was remembering when to use carro with one R and when to use carro with two R's. And I would kind of always forget, I would always mess it up, and then every time I'd be like, oh, like next time I'm gonna remember. And then I'm like, Bethany, use elaboration, right? Like this is what's gonna help cement this in your mind, when to use carro versus carro. So carro with one R equals expensive, while carro with two R's equals like a car. And so I taught myself to remember this by thinking of the sound we usually associate with a car, you know, even just for babies, it's like vroom, vroom, right? Like those two R's, the R is really present in vroom, vroom. And so I know, okay, when I need to choose carro because I'm talking with a sentence about a car, think of vroom, vroom, and it's stuck with me, and it will now hopefully stick with me for the rest of my life. It may not be sensical to other people, but it doesn't matter. It's relevant to me. Another example in your real life, right, and like in mundane human life, is if you are in a big, you know, airport parking lot, right, with many different sections of the parking lot, and you're like, ugh, how am I going to remember where my car is when I get back from my trip 3 days from now? And let's say the section you parked in is like B8. So you're like, okay, B8. Obviously, you could take a picture on your phone. That's a great effective way of using tech tools. But a way to use elaboration and remember this just with your mind would make some type of relevant association for yourself. So for me, if I was parking in section B8, I would be like BB-8 from Star Wars, right? I love BB-8. He's adorable. He's a little droid who saves the day. And so when I get back from my trip, I'll be like, okay, where's my car? I'm thinking, okay, so it has to do with Star Wars. Oh yeah, I'm parked in section B8. So make it make sense to you, make it something that's relevant, cool, fun, exciting to you, and you'll be able to recall this information later. If any examples have come up for you now, feel free to jot those down, and you can even share them in the free discussion space in our D2L site. I think these are always fun. Just gives you a little bit of insight into like how others think and what's important to them. So definitely share that in the free discussion space. I'd love to see what you guys come up with. So study groups, this may or may not work for everybody, depending on who you are as a person or who is made up of your, who's in your study group. Like I said, for me, I am somewhat of a study group derailer. I get myself distracted and I can get other people distracted. And so for me, this isn't always the first choice I take, but study groups can help you build accountability. They can keep you on track. They can just be there for moral support, especially if you're taking a class that's just difficult across the board, like it's known for being a difficult course. You guys can come together, you can support each other, work through things together, and encourage each other. So in a study group, it's obviously much more, it's easier to employ the testing effect, to teach each other, to draw diagrams. So that's a plus. It can help you facilitate elaboration or deep processing techniques, coming together to brainstorm associations that are relevant to you guys, helping to find holes in your understanding of the material. This is what's so important, right? We may think we totally understand a concept, but then when we're kind of explaining it to other people or talking about it, you've realized, oh my gosh, I'm totally missing a part, or I misunderstood, you know, what we went over in lecture. And so now, because we've come together in a collaborative way, I see that, I can correct that and remember it the right way and employ that information the right way. So things to consider: do you feel on task when studying in a group? And then what are some creative spaces to form a group online? Because the majority of you are online students, a study group can be difficult to form. You're not seeing your peers in person. You're not running into them at, like the cafeteria and the student union. And so a couple of ways you can form study groups, even being online here at the U of UA, is through the Discord server that U Arizona online and near you offers, and then the Facebook group that they also offer. So I have put those two links in the free discussions community space. Feel free to access those if you're not already joined or a part of those. They're great for community in many different reasons, or for many different reasons, but definitely for forming study groups. And they usually will during finals period at the end of the term. They usually will kind of host some type of study group. So feel free to get involved with that. Self-regulated learning. What does this mean? It sounds really fancy, but truly, when we boil it down, it comes down to reflection and strategy. So just reviewing your previous tests, reviewing your previous homeworks. What scores did you get? What are you missing on these assignments or exams? And then is there a trend there? Is there a specific chapter or section it's not clicking with you quite as much as other sections? Or it really, maybe it's kind of across the board, and so you need to go talk to your instructor about, what do I do? What kind of tools or concepts can I use so I better am tackling this course? An example of this cute little test here, who knows what grade this is for, right? But just, they circled the larger number, and then when they went to show how they got this answer, they just drew a beautiful rainbow. And so this would be great to reflect on your understanding, how you can choose the better answer, where you went wrong, how you can study differently. Practicing quizzes, so like redoing them if possible, or kind of just like revisiting the answers that you chose. Finding where you typically get off track, going to office hours. So I already hinted at that. So important. Even as an online student, you can still make an appointment, or they may have drop-in hours for office hours online through Zoom or a different platform. Go to that. Discuss your tests and exams and assignments. Ask questions about what you missed on these things, and then taking in feedback to strategize any needed changes. I was a frequent user of office hours. An added bonus, they will know you better as a student. It's easy to get kind of lost in the mix when you're an online student, and so you can use them as a contact as you move forward, possibly as a letter of recommendation if you form a good relationship with them. Even if you didn't get the best score in their class, they're still going to understand you as a person and your skills better if you're attending office hours and getting to know them a little bit more personally. So most important in this grand scheme of studying, right? So we've looked at what you need to do behavior-wise, and then the actual tools you can use. But the other piece of that is avoiding burnout. This is tough, especially as being an online student, being potentially a post-traditional student, an adult learner. You've got a lot on your plate. You are still pursuing this amazing goal of earning your degree. And so you want to be deliberate with your time, take breaks, avoid technology the best that you can. This is hard if you're an online student, because literally the bulk of you attending is through technology. But maybe you're cutting out phone time as much as you can when you're attending classes online. Maybe you're not binge watching shows on Netflix or Hulu quite as much on those days where you're really online a lot. Just giving your eyes, your mind, your physical body a break from technology in strategizing on that. So dual task interference is a big one. So many people love listening to music when they study. I don't blame you. I have music on almost 24/7. I just need it. But when you're learning material, when you're going over material, especially when you're reading, You want to use music that is just as little distracting as possible. So potentially classical music or any kind of music that doesn't have words, because your brain is going to struggle to decipher which information should I pay attention to. Should I be paying attention to these lyrics, or should I be paying attention to what they're reading or listening to if they're rewatching a recorded lecture? What you also want to consider when you're studying, especially for an exam, is the similar condition effect. So psychology has shown us that if we can study in an environment that is most similar to what our exams or like high value tasks will be, you will feel more comfortable in that exam taking environment, right? Because if you're sitting in this like loud, busy, engaging environment, and then you go to take your exam and it's in this quiet space with bright lights, you know, like that's so different. That's like whiplash of what you're exposing yourselves to. So try to essentially put yourself in the same conditions of this high value task. So that way your body is like, oh yeah, no, we're used to this. I am primed to remember this information, to feel calm, and to like be engaged with this type of material so I can remember it better. I did already kind of talk about procrastination blockers in terms of limiting your distractions. This also helps with taking breaks to avoid technology. So some that I find really helpful are the Forest app. You can put that on your phone, your tablet. I don't know if you can put it on your laptop. You might be able to, but it's a free app and you just set a timer and it's going to keep it from your phone. If you try to open your phone, it'll even tell you, hey, get back to work, and it'll kind of like try to keep on track. The cute thing is while you are being diligent and allowing the timer run through, it's growing a beautiful tree that you've chosen. And so it's not only tracking your progress with the trees, because you're growing a little forest as you use forest, but if you do break the timer and you get into your phone before the timer is up, it will kill your tree. So it's a bit of a motivator there. I find it really engaging. It's kind of gamified, which helps you want to use it. And then productivity owls, great for your laptop for sure. You would just choose, it's just like a Google Chrome extension, and you can choose the pages you want it to restrict. And so if you were to try to get into Facebook or try to get into some site that's maybe used just for distraction, it would say, hey, like this is blocked. And you can always turn that off once you're done studying, right? But so just a little bit of motivators there. Write things down and organize. This will be different for everybody. Some people really thrive with like a physical agenda there. Some people not so much. And so I know for me, I rely a lot on OneNote on my computer, and I also rely on my Outlook calendar. That is where my memory lives technically. It tells me what to do. And so I feel confident that as long as I get it in there onto my calendar or in my OneNote, I don't have to stress myself out about like, oh, like how many things am I juggling and how many things am I trying to remember? I can trust that my calendar is set up in that way. And so it just cues me just right on time to start working on things. If you need help with organizing those things, like if that's kind of a newer skill for you and you haven't found what works for you best, feel free to contact me in the D2L section where it says meet with me, or you can talk to your academic advisor and we can kind of brainstorm with you. We can figure it out what works for you right now. That's what's most important. Things like that don't always stay stable. And so just work with us. We'll totally figure it out together. Exercise, meditation, and affirmations. Not everybody's an affirmations person. It's kind of just like saying things to yourself to kind of keep your mind in a place where you really want it to be, typically a positive way. But exercise, meditation, it's just a moment for you to be in the moment, to de-stress physically, and so that way you can come back to whatever you're doing a little bit more energized, a little bit more revived there, and so you can keep going on this marathon that is towards working towards your degree. So here's your activity that you will just do on your own. Jot these down, please do it. So write down 2 goals or how you'll accomplish them, or you can write down 2 techniques you'll use to study this semester. They most likely should be the ones that we covered today, but if they're not, go for it. Like if you found something else that we didn't cover today that works for you, do it. Write it down and commit to this, right? Definitely helps if you tell me or your academic advisor. We're here to be your accountability buddies. So that can be helpful. And then the third one, write down an affirmation or quote you'll use to keep yourself positive and motivated this semester. It's tough, like this is just one moment on this journey. And so right now, what words can you share with yourself, future self, so that way you go, okay, like I can do this, I can stay on track, I'm excited. My example is if you were able to believe in Santa Claus for like 8 years, you can believe in yourself for like 5 minutes, or I'm capable of great things. Those are both good things. Feel free to steal those if you want to. If you have any questions after watching this, please feel free to email me at uazscastretention@arizona.edu. I'm more than happy to assist you, and so are all of our academic advisors. You are not in this alone. It's just one part. It's going to be great. And then here's Ryan Gosling. So have a great day, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.